was already quite a few years ago, is that there's a very poor availability of risky investments for startups. So if you want to start a company in Finland, you want to start a company in Nordics, and you want to start some kind of a very globally oriented company that needs a lot of funding. So that funding is not available so much around here because we have very little venture capitalists that are doing these risky investments. So what we needed is actually to bring the investors to come here and to meet with the local companies, with the startups, and bring the ecosystem together. So the aim was to start a world-class conference. So world-class conference for startups and investors, and this was started in 2008. And the first one was only 300 people, about the size of this event, and bringing them for one day to meet up. And until that day, the event has grown double every year. It's run by a student-driven organization, so it's only now it's 12 people working on it full time, but there's 1,500 volunteers making the whole event happen. So I have a video about the conference to give you a little idea of what's happening there. Thank you. So basically, Slush brings 15,000 people from 80 different countries around the world to Helsinki in November. And the catch is that it's slush, the name is slush, so which means wet snow, and there is nothing but wet snow in Helsinki in November. So, and then of course the slush itself. So what's good to bear in mind looking at these figures is the fact that actually the average age of a slush organizer is 23 years old. And that's something that we keep very important, that we only work for a few years on the conference and then move it on for the new people to take the crown and sort of take it forward. And it's a very good experience, crown, very good place to try new things, start experimenting things, and to create something which is world class. And basically, so 750 investors, 1,400 startups, startups from 75 countries. And these startups have raised about 250 million euros only last year from these investors that they have made at Schloss. So that's really trying to make a real impact into how the startup ecosystem works. Okay, a third case, which is industry hack, which is something that I've been working on this year and only started it this January. And it was originally started in a meeting that I showed previously, that meeting where we were discussing about how to create new startups in the area of industrial internet. So taking the old industrial companies to the digital era, which is funny to talk to you about digital era, but the industrial companies find it something new. You don't know anything else that existed before. But basically, the problem was that we saw that there is the lack of collaboration between the startups and the corporations. So the bigger companies like to keep everything to themselves. They like to invent themselves. And the startups tend to be more innovative, but they don't have the resources that the big companies do. And what we wanted to do is create a meeting point, create something, sort of a meaningful platform for these two parties to discuss, to develop something new, and to create new companies around that. So how we started solving this was that we said to big corporations that, hey, you have to spend a weekend. I know you don't like to spend the weekend working, but you have to spend this weekend working, and invite these startups, developers, to your offices, to your facilities, to your factories, and let them play around with whatever your products are. So that was the starting point, and we sort of started with these 1 weekend long hackathons. And there's also a video of what's happening in these ones.
Last winter, we invited 40 traders to hack Ukraine. This is what happened. Welcome to the Internet of Real.
Thank you. So basically, we've already organized 3 events this year. We have 7 to go this year, and this actually has spinned into an actual company, and we'll start doing this. We have already actually 2 hackathons in Germany, and we start doing this around the world. So far we have had 145 participants from both the hackers that have been invited and the people working for these corporations that are working with the people in here. And we've already seen 50 experimentations that takes, it usually takes 6 months to create one experimentation in these corporations. So we've sort of helped them to create faster, start experimenting, start with wild ideas, start something that they can actually renew themselves. And we've already seen companies that have founded from these events We've seen products that have been developed further and already taken. For example, Connect Trains took one product that was developed in the hackathon, took it further with the team, and is now part of their product portfolio. So there's already something happening there, and we're seeing other companies that want to do the same. So from these three cases and a lot of other experiences, what are the lessons learned that I want to bring you here? So three things. So first of all, is when you find a problem you want to solve, start thinking small first. So the idea is that you have to do something. So either it's you start with a small event, you ask a few people to come there, you start with an idea, you sketch something down, but start doing something. And the idea is that start experimenting. It doesn't always go right the first time, so it's about doing things over and over again, learning from the failures. But being very ambitious. So the idea is that you see that, okay, where you're going, you see that, okay, you're gonna do this globally, you wanna really change the world. But the idea is that don't start with the end goal. Don't start producing what is the end goal and what you want to achieve. Don't start making a community of 5 million people. Start with a community of 5 people. And we get the 5 people excited. When you get them involved and get them sort of burning, then it's easier just beginning for the 5 million than to start with something that is actually planned for the 5 million people. So that is the first step. The second step is to making it interesting. What I do here is I'm using a lot of videos and a lot of things that try to sort of communicate what we're doing in some kind of interesting way, in some kind of meaningful way, and that grabs the attention and sort of communicates the idea. So it's very important what you start doing, but also that start communicating about it immediately, start involving people and start sort of getting people excited. So that's the second part. The third part is that the impact comes via involving. So whatever, like I said in the beginning, that whatever, how big the idea is, how big you want to make it, you have to start with getting the people interested. And this means also that sometimes you have to abandon your vision, sometimes you have to abandon your ideas that what is the end goal, but just if you get people excited, then let them shape also what is the end result, how that's going to be looking like. So involving people, talking about the idea, getting them excited, getting them involved into actually making the idea further is very key. So whenever you want to solve a problem in society, bend the status quo to work around it. So start shaping how people perceive the world, what is possible, what they see as possible, and start working on that. So that is my outcome, and I hope you get something out of it. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have. Thank you. So what made me start this business, or basically how I have ended up starting businesses is truly usually through coincidence or something, sort of some kind of random event. For example, the industry hack was like I said, that it was originated from a conversation from about seminars, how to organize, how to get startups involved, and in the session, sort of I just brought that, okay, there's this format of hackathons, and no one knew about that you could do, and there was the company Connect Range was also part of the discussion, and they said, yeah, let's do that. So then we just, okay, let's start doing it, and that ended up into being something that we replicated to a lot of different companies, and that's sort of the idea was that, okay, I want to help these people, I want to do something with them, and sort of, I would say that you shouldn't wait for the sort of the big idea to come, but actually start doing something, because that will help you to format the way that, okay, you start doing something small that will help you see possibilities. Okay, if we do this more and more, or do this with these people, then we can actually do something else. So that I would say that is sort of good starting point. Yeah, on the back. That's a very good point. Something that you have to sort of start doing something, that you have to start experimenting what works for you. But the big thing that how you get people motivated is that you have the big idea in mind, that where you want to go, where you want to sort of, that you are, if you start the project, you are the founder of the project, you have the big vision of where this is going, what is the world that we see, sort of how the world is after this project, and sort of telling that, repeating that to the people, and sort of really truly believing in that yourself is the first key, and then communicating that to the people, and that is sort of how you get people inspired and motivated about the big goal, and then it's easier for them to sort of be inspired that, okay, how does this one thing, how does this one blog post or this Instagram photo that we're putting there, how does this actually benefit the bigger purpose? And sort of keeping that in mind, if people have problems with motivation, trying to always bring that to the bigger vision, and that's also good starting point for discussion. Okay, why are we doing this? What should we do in order to make this sort of goal happen? I don't know if this answered your question. Yeah, on there. I think it usually comes from that I sort of, as sort of some kind of creative person, I'm inspired by doing something that hasn't been done before, and sort of seeing something that I can do, actually, that creating this will be just sort of way that to get it out of my systems, and that's sort of how I keep motivated, and how sort of what keeps me going. But I think that's different for anyone, and sort of there are different points how you keep yourself motivated, but usually it's the end goal that I want to sort of get this achieved, or this done, or I want to see this kind of change happen. Yeah, there. Getting to investors is well, that's something that we're working on at SLUS to sort of create a meeting point for startups to meet with investors. So there are millions of ways to connect with investors, but a good way is through different events where the meetings are facilitated. So investors come there to look for companies, and companies come there to look for investors. So that's sort of good starting point. Then of course contacting them directly. Different investors have different kind of ways that how they want to meet with companies, but the basic idea is that investors want to meet you if you have an idea, and then sort of they have their way that how you can pitch them the idea. So, but basically the events are a good way to sort of start getting to know the investors. Over there.
Let's say your hack would have failed. What would your next steps be in the process? How would you work with that? What would you do?
Depending on how like what kind of the failure would have been. So we were lucky with this one that it was actually a success, but the truth is that the first industry hack was a success, but I have organized several different kind of hackathons, different kind of events that have been successful in a varying degrees. So sort of using my sort of previous experience in creating something new was the key. But basically, if that wouldn't have worked, I wouldn't probably be talking about industry hack here. So sort of that's I have like tens and dozens of different projects that I have started and sort of then abandoned if they didn't work from the beginning. So these are only some projects that have been taken further. Over there. Of course, building on existing project is something that, for example, Slush, I didn't go into the detail about the history of Slush, but it was first started by 6 entrepreneurs that ran it for a few years, and then sort of the student group that I was part of took the conference and sort of as claimed the new ownership of that. So there was something existing, but sort of renewed the actual how the conference worked, changed it to being more ambitious globally, and working on that. So I think it's a very good starting point for creating something new, to take something that you see that okay, there's huge potential on this, and it's not being sort of something that's being used at the moment. Do we have to?
Just wondering if there's one last question you'd like to take.
Okay.
I would like to ask, like, you as an entrepreneur, do you think like the global financial crisis is like a tackled with a proper way, or do you have something else in mind?
So how do I see the financial crisis affecting entrepreneurship or?
Like, if you think this is the proper way entrepreneurs thinking to tackle crisis?
Well, I think that the sort of the entrepreneurs usually don't think through like what is the current economic situation, and for an entrepreneur, financial crisis is the perfect moment to start a company. So that's usually when things are already changing, things have to change in this society. That's sort of the best time to start a company and start something new, because the demand for something new is already very big, and sort of people need more efficient ways to do things and new ways to do things. So that I think that's something that's very important for the starting point of a new company or a new project or social startup. And I think now is the like very good time to start something new, and that also helps that you don't have to think about the financial crisis, because you don't have anything to lose. You're only starting, you're ramping up. So what you're sort of getting is actually every day something new. Yeah, I think this is enough.
This was Petri Vilen. Thank you very much, Petri. We're going to now move to our second speaker, Krista Simberg, who's going to tell us about projects and action in an environment that probably we know best, European Youth Parliament.
Hi again. All right. So tonight is about ideas and projects and ideas into action, right? And to start off, I would like to get the feel a bit from the room, from you. Can we have a round of show of hands who had good discussions today? Woohoo! Almost everyone had good discussions today. That's great. Then secondly, who of you are in a committee who is thinking about a project or about doing something? Wow! Woo! Very nice. Asha and Robert are very happy here in the first row. Thirdly, who of you might have had the idea of doing a project or doing something after the session, either in EYP or outside of it? Wow. Not bad. Very impressive. Thanks a lot. Asha and Robert asked me to speak a little bit about projects in general, and the next 15 minutes or so I'll try to also give you some general ingredients or components of projects. I will be focusing on the EYP environment indeed. This is the arena that I know best and where I have worked with most projects. But then if you use my input in EYP or outside of it, that's up to you. And before I start, I actually have great news for you. The great news are that you are in EYP. Woo! I think that that's already a super good and important step to take. In EYP, or the whole network of EYP, is in a way built to enable ideas and to enable projects. And what's more important, it's built to enable your projects. EYP is really a bottom-up network. Good. I don't have the light in my face anymore. A bottom-up network. And since you're here in Tampere now, becoming our members and our volunteers, you also will have the possibility of carrying through your own projects and ideas into action. Also in EYP, which I of course hope you will do. Our volunteers, or as volunteers, the most valuable time, the valuable thing you can give is your time. In EYP we tend to give quite a lot of responsibility and to give it quite quickly to our volunteers. So it's definitely there for you to grab, and there's plenty of options for you to have ideas and carry out projects if you want. A bit depending on what country you come from, but still the options are many. So I think it's really great that you're here. That's a very good step, and I hope that all the hands that were raised when I asked if you have any plans to do projects afterwards, that some of them also are EYP-related projects, and that we can come to your training events or sessions or whatnot in the future. Right. Then to some components or ingredients needed in projects. I think I will partly overlap with Petri. Let's see if you notice how we overlap, but some of the thoughts definitely are the same. I think that first, in any project, it might be obvious, but first you need an idea. You need to know what you want to do and how you want to do it. But what's even more important, if you ask me, is not what you want to do or how you want to do it, but why you want to do it. Yeah? Why? And the why is not that you happen to come to this EYP session in Tampere and someone told you to do a project. That's not a good why, but the why would really be your passion, in a way, for the project, your belief in the project, the core idea, the reason why your project or your idea exists, the reason why it should be a good idea, and really the core ingredient to carry through the project. Once you have your idea and your why to the idea, you also need to be able to communicate your idea. I've seen quite a lot of ideas, also in EYP, that were good ideas, but somehow they failed in the end. And I think a lot of it is because it's difficult, or it was difficult perhaps for the people behind the idea to really convince others and communicate what the project was about, what they wanted to do, and to speak about the project in different ways to different people. So when you start involving others in your project, and I think inevitably you will get in touch with other people, these won't buy, in a way, what you want to do, but rather the why. It's the passion often that sells, and this shows. If you want to know more about the why, there is actually another real TED Talk by Simon Sinek. Start with the why, it's called. So look it up if you're interested. Simon Sinek, a very good real TED Talk. But to recap, so you need an idea, you need to know why the idea is good, and you need to be able to communicate the idea. Yeah? Secondly, when you have all this, you have your idea, you have your why, I think then comes in the commitment and the motivation to actually do the project. Because even if you have a great why, it fails, I think, without this ingredient. And this ingredient often comes down to hard work, commitment, long hours, and pushing it a little bit to make it real. Because when you have a project and when you want to do something, be that in EYP or outside of it, the project or the idea, in my opinion, will be completely dependent on your drive to carry it through. And in the end, you're responsible for the success of the project. And to not make that barrier too high and to make projects and ideas too intimidating, just like Asha said yesterday and just like Petri said a few minutes ago, I would encourage you to think small. Yeah? Start with something small. What can you do yourself today? What can you do at home to change things? What can you do together with friends? And then when you've developed small steps and small projects, you can then take on more. It really doesn't have to be complicated at all. And many projects, of course, also come down to money. We all have visions, we all have dreams. Most of them cost money. As you might know as well, for example, in EYP, we're a fundraising-based organization. We always have to seek external funding for every project and every event we do. And every euro we spend, we need to first find. And this might also be a good, in a way, step why to start with the small. Perhaps think of something you can do without money first to get going and to try out those ideas. And luckily, if you do get to the bigger projects, like organizing an EYP session, for example, there usually is a very nice support structure in place to turn to. And here I actually come to my third point then. And this is, if you have the idea, you have the why, you have the commitment and the drive to make it happen, you also need people around you to help you and to make it happen. So finding people is the next step then. I don't know how many of you would like to stand in the middle of the main square here in Tampere and do the jellyfish song or the moose song all by yourself. Someone would. That's great commitment. But yesterday, when we all did it together, everyone was all of a sudden in. And it becomes much more easier and it becomes much more fun if you do it together with someone else. So find the people who believe and who share your why. Find the people who have the commitment and the motivation to work for your project and your idea. And think of them a bit like a puzzle, and think what pieces of the puzzle you're missing when you think about their strengths as individuals, when you think about the role they can play in the project and what responsibilities they can have. And in EYP as well, we tend to do things together. Luckily, in EYP at least, we're quite good at finding great people, like we've also found here in Tampere, and doing things together. I've run many projects, smaller and larger, in EYP, but it's always been a team effort. So always doing them together with someone else and having someone else on my side when I've done them, and kind of there to compensate for my weaknesses and so on. When it comes to projects, I think Tampere, for example, this session here is a great example. It first started with an idea, with the vision that Robert had back in 2009, and he held on to that idea and vision. So that's the commitment and motivation part. It might have changed a bit along the years and along the way, but nevertheless, here we are. And it's a huge team effort, not only from the organizers, but from all of us, to be here and make this event as successful as it is. It is in the end the sum of all of us, in a way, that make it. So that's it, in a way. To recap, you need an idea, you need a why, you need to be able to communicate it, you need to have some commitment, some motivation to push it through, and then you need great people around you. With that, you get already started, at least, not all the way yet, but now it's about, I think, getting ideas into action and at least starting the process of developing your ideas and your thoughts and your visions into something more concrete. I think you can do it. So now it's really up to you to prove it. Yeah? If there are any questions, I would be happy to try to answer them. About EYP, about EYP projects, about how it works in EYP, or then something completely different. There's one. Wow. I mean, it is difficult times, for sure. But again, I would come back to the small things that you can do. Things that you can do back home in your own community, in your own village or city or your own school. It really can be quite small and can even feel sometimes that, you know, oh, this is not going to make a difference. But I hope that also by focusing on projects here in Tampere, we can show that and give you some sort of inspiration that and show you that they can make a difference, and you can then involve others and make it into something bigger than what you could do on your own, in a way. So don't lose faith. I think young people altogether can really do great things for each other, but also for society in general. I mean, we and you are the future, so it's also a bit up to us to show what we can do. Here's another question. The question was what makes EYP so special and what makes people in EYP so special. A lot of things. I think, well, I can only speak for myself and what I think makes EYP special. One of the reasons I've stayed active for so many years and always keep on coming back in a way is that I feel that EYP always was able to give me something more. There's so many different things to try out, there's so many different roles and things to do. There's always the next challenge. You're first a delegate perhaps, but then you can try different roles. You can be an organizer, a journalist, a chairperson, and try out those until you feel comfortable and more at ease in a way. And then the next levels keep on coming. When you have chaired 10 times and think that chairing is boring, you can always move on to vice presiding or doing trainings or joining a board of a national committee or a regional committee, etc., etc. So the levels are endless in a way. I still find new levels in EYP after many years. After 12 years, I think it is for me. So that I think is one aspect why EYP for me is quite special. There's always something new to learn. And what makes people great, it's, I think, just EYPers are just great. Their openness, you're open to new people, new ideas, you're open to learn. I think that's very important, an important aspect. So, yeah. Then here in the front.
Considering the future, what direction do you think EYP is going, and what role does it have in the middle of other political youth organizations?
So what direction is EYP heading in, and what's our role compared to other youth organizations? Yeah. Political youth organizations, you said. Well, firstly, we're not really a political youth organization. I think that's an important clarification. We're an educational youth organization. We do political education. So sometimes it's a bit difficult where the line is. We're not political per se, but of course, we bring you together to discuss current topics in Europe and political matters. But we try to do it from an educational perspective. So I think that also is one way we differ from many other youth organizations. Then where we're heading, I think one area where we're still developing and that will be big and coming in the next years it's really our challenge as well to reach out to as many young people all over Europe as possible. We reached out to you quite easily, and we reached out to certain high schools quite easily, but there are still many groups of young people who we would like to have involved in our activities who are not at the moment, who are perhaps from less privileged backgrounds or from more rural areas, or perhaps not interested in what's going on in Europe and about current issues discussed on the European level. And these are young people that we would also like to reach. And I think that's one of our next challenges as well, and an area where we'll focus a lot of time and energy in the, or we already are, but more and more so in the coming years. And then I think you were first. Can you specify what group you mean? Ah, the Schwarzkopf Foundation. Okay, good. So, this now becomes a presentation of EYP, but shortly. So, on the European level, the Schwarzkopf Foundation is our legal entity. So, the foundation, it's a German foundation, owns the name of EYP, for example, on the European level, and owns the logo of EYP and kind of oversees our activities on the European level. Whereas then in all the different countries where we're active, we have an independent national committee. The Schwarzkopf Foundation, although it's a German foundation and many foundations in Germany are very rich, unfortunately the Schwarzkopf Foundation is not one of them. So just like EYP, the Schwarzkopf Foundation is also a fundraising-based organization. It supports EYP activities a lot already because, for example, I'm employed by the Schwarzkopf Foundation and our office is located in there or shared with them in Berlin. But just like we have to for EYP projects find funding from external parties, also the foundation does the same for all their projects, and EYP is one of them then. So unfortunately, there's not really a pot of gold sitting in Berlin either. We would be happy if there would be. But of course, one of our tasks in Berlin at the international office is to support national committees in their activities and in organizing the basic EYP events, national sessions, selections, training events, etc. So we do try to find funding also on the European level mostly for our national committees, so that we can support them in their activities. But then when it comes to projects developed here in Tampere, for example, well, difficult to say because I don't really know what projects will come out of this session yet. But then I think we have to see case by case. There's not really a support structure in place for that. For EYP projects, there always is a certain extent of a support structure because of our national committees and regional committees. So, for example, if your project is to organize more of EYP, you will find help. But then, just like everything really in EYP, if it comes to fundraising and you have to then do fundraising for your project, that's also a learning experience and an educational curve in a way to go through. So part of the experience in a way. Yeah. We need to stop now, says Asha. One last, there's a guy waving actively in the back. So what was the last question? Sorry? What? Sorry, what are my... I heard working days. Okay. So as a general point, we have, so the EYP has an international office in Berlin, where I also work, and my colleague Stefan, who is sitting there in the back, waving at you. Without Stefan, I would be completely lost, and this is true. And we have a small team at the Schwarzkopf Foundation in Berlin working for EYP on the European level. And our job is to, in a way we see ourselves or want to see ourselves as a resource center a little bit for the EYP network, mostly for our national committees. So our job is to, on the one hand, support the national committees and enable them to do EYP and reach out to more young people in their countries. And then on the other hand, ensure the continuity and the development and the sustainability of the EYP program on the European level. So indeed, us supporting national committees is one of our core activities, and we have been quite successful with fundraising this year. So as you rightly mentioned, we've opened up a support fund for national committees now, mostly in the field of outreach and inclusion, which I mentioned earlier. There was a question from the front. So this is how we try to help EYP and reach out more people. And as I said, EYP is a bottom-up process. It's a grassroots movement. We heavily rely on our volunteers. So there's only so much we can do from Berlin, and therefore we try to reach out to all the countries where they work on the national level and know the national context the best. Yeah. Thank you very much for your questions and for your time. Okay.
Thank you very much, Krista. It's really refreshing to see those two perspectives, the entrepreneurial perspective and investors and the exciting life that happens after EYP, but also to have the EYP perspective that is so close to our hearts. We are about to start the Action Village. Yay! What does that mean for you? In the next, let's say 25 minutes or so, together with your committee, you will be asked to prepare your stand. What is a stand? It will be a flip chart on which you should put the cause that you are trying to help. You don't need to put the entire topic, you don't need to put the topic overview or anything like this. The causes we are after are, for instance, cyberbullying, or privacy in digital area, or fighting youth unemployment, or supporting youth in least developed countries. This is the kind of level of abstraction we're after. On your stand, it would be grand if you could also add post-its with the big ideas for actions that you might already have had, either for your project as a committee or general ideas of how that cause could be helped. So that's your stage number one. This stand of your committee should always have at least one person from the committee there. Because in the second stage, all the delegates will be walking up to all the other stands and trying to understand A, what the cause is about, and B, what can be done about it. So it would be great if we had at least one expert on the topic, one person from your committee always at the stand. That person can change. So what is it that you should try to achieve today in a very short time that we have allocated for this? A, please try to learn about all the other causes that we are after at this session, not only your own. So try to visit all the other stands to understand what is it that we're after, what kind of change are we trying to achieve. And B, that's the difficult part, I'd like to challenge you to leave 5 post-its today on 5 of those stands. And on those post-its, you should write a sentence starting with, I will, and then specify what would you do. For every cause at this session, there is something that you can do to help that cause advance, even if it is a very, very small step, even if it is just at this session or just within your small community. So I challenge you to leave at least 5 post-its, 1 per stand of other committees. Why are we doing this? On one hand, we would like you to understand what is it that Tampere 2015 is after, and you will get that by going to other committees. And we want to start this process of shifting mindsets, that we're not only thinking about abstract things, but also the specific things that can be done. So that's the bigger view. From the perspective of your committee, what we hope that you get after this is either loads of ideas for small actions that can be taken on your topic, or loads of people who want to support the action or the project that you already have in place. If your committee already has a project, this is a time for you to pitch it to the other delegates. If your committee hasn't thought about the project yet, it's a time for you to gather ideas for small things that can be done around your topic. Are there any questions? All right, then I would suggest that we spend the next 20-25 minutes until 10 to 9 on preparing your stands, and then from 10 to 9 until 10, that's only 70 minutes, I invite you to check out the other stands and help them with your tiny action that can help their cause. And then we will meet back here at 10 for the broadcast of the day. Preparation of